Welcome to episode 158 of the Left Behind Game Club. This week we play Yakuza 0. Let's get right into it.
You're listening to the Left Behind Game Club.
Welcome to the Left Behind Game Club, our never-ending attempt to make sure that no game is left behind. I'm your host, Flora Marigold, and today I have three friends with me. The first friend, who made it 2 chapters into this week's game, and I did not expect to be here, Mike Ruffalo. How you doing, Mike?
I'm good. I'm excited to talk about a very weird game.
Weird indeed. And the second friend, who's been going down a rabbit hole of side content on this journey with us, Katie Lesperance.
Always. I'm ready. I'm going to fight off gang members and disco dance to the beat.
Like nonstop, though, right?
Ugh.
You finally have some context for our Friday night GIFs. But
yeah.
Our third friend here, Imran Khan, games writer and journalist, head of USPR producer at My Dearest. And Imran, welcome to the show.
Hello, thank you for having me. I am a gigantic Yakuza fan, and I will leap at any chance to talk about it. You could not even be recording. It could just be like 4 people like, yeah, let's just talk about Yakuza 0. Like, I'll be there.
Perfect. This is actually just a big ruse, so that way we could get you here to talk about it with us.
Yeah. We need to stop talking about Yakuza 0 at some point in my life. Not today, though.
Not today. Today is not that day.
So, Imran, thank you so much for being here. Do you want to tell us a little bit about your work and kind of like how you came to be here today, aside from your fandom of the Yakuza series?
So I am I've been a games writer for 20 years, but I think like I've been most well known for the last 5 to 7 years. When I was working I was a senior editor at Game Informer. I was at Kind of Funny. I was a senior editor at Fanbyte. I currently run a Patreon named Pros and Cons, which is a terrible name to say out loud because I really like word puns. But when you're trying to build a brand off them, no one knows what you're actually talking about. So it's PROSE and KHANS, which is my name. But like nobody hears that. They only hear pros, like the phrase pros. Anyway, proscons.com is where my Patreon is. So if anyone wants to come see that, I talk about video games a lot there too. But the reason I am here is Yakuza fandom, and that fandom that essentially bleeds into my career to the point where I like I'm a big fan of the series. I've talked to the people who make that series come to life quite a bit.
That is by the way, that's a great pun.
Yeah.
But I had no idea that was a pun until you broke it down for me.
Yeah, that's the problem.
Yeah.
Is that you look at it on the page like, oh, I get it now. That's a good name. But when I make podcast appearances, I have to bring a sign or something that says what it is.
Yeah, unfortunately. Podcasting just can't be the medium then. Okay. As long as you're cool with this, we're going to run you through the gauntlet. This is to give people who are not familiar with you a bit of context, a bit of, a bit of color for your takes before we get into the spicy curry that is Yakuza 0. How does that sound?
Sounds good. Yeah, sounds great.
Flora, do you want to kick us off?
Yeah, absolutely. So a question that I had for you, Imran, is what's a game that you've really wanted to like, but you just simply couldn't get into despite trying it?
This came up again recently. So I played Shadow of War years ago. I actually have the Game Informer cover right up here because it was the first issue I was published in. But I tried to play that game and I was like, this is just not hitting. It's not. I feel like I played this 3 years ago with Shadow of Mordor. So I kind of gave up on it. Within about 2 weeks ago, my partner held a Lord of the Rings food party, which is you watch all 3 movies, extended editions, and eat whatever they're eating.
That's awesome.
Which turns out,
yes,
it's a lot of food.
Do that.
So like you're eating like a chicken messily while like the king from what's his name eats it. There's like an extended thing where like you can also smoke whatever while they're smoking, which by like the end of the first movie, I'm pretty sure you'd be like well gone. But anyway, we were doing this, and I had never seen Return of the King before. Somehow I just missed it. I just never got to that point in the movies. So I was like, wait, that's Shelob? Shelob's a big spider. That's not what she's like in Shadow of War. So I go back. I have a Steam Deck now, and I was like, I'm gonna go play Shadow of War and be like, what's the deal with this? They explain it. No, they don't really ever explain it. Why she's a hot lady in that game and a giant spider in Return of the King. So it's just like, but also I came away from that going, okay, this is not. I still don't get this game. I still don't get why people like this or why anyone considers this better than Shadow of Mordor, which is I think, more interesting, more revolutionary, and overall better game.
I 100% agree. I fired up Shadow of War and was like, this isn't it. I don't know why, but it's just it doesn't feel the same.
Oh.
It's not as good.
Yeah. I mean, I will get back to it someday. I hope. Maybe.
I don't know.
That makes me so sad as like a lifelong Lord of the Rings fan. I've never actually picked this up. But
Shadow of Mordor, great.
Mordor's great, yeah.
Oh, I love Mordor.
I mean, it might be that if you play War without Mordor, that War is actually really good.
Yeah,
but Mordor does like all the stuff Shadow of War does, but first.
Yeah.
So it's very hard to go back to and be like, I feel like I've played this already, but now they're doing it like
they just added on to Mordor to make War, and I'm like, I don't need the extra stuff. I just want to play Shadow of Mordor.
Yeah.
Awesome. Okay, next question. Have you ever pretended to be sick to get out of something so you could play video games instead?
Yes, hundreds, like to the point where like
Hundreds
my mom
of
had
times.
to. Yeah, well, maybe not hundreds, maybe exaggeration, but dozens, sure. My mom had to make a rule that like I can't play video games if I'm staying home sick, which flagrantly ignored. I remember specifically her hiding my copy of, because I bought Wind Waker. The next day, whoa, I'm sick, and then she hid the copy that I just bought somewhere. But then she like, I don't know if this is my mom trying to be nice or my mom being very forgetful, but she left it on the kitchen counter. Oh. So I just grabbed it and played it. like just started playing it. And when she came home, she had no problem with me already being in the second dungeon. So she was like, all right, whatever, just keep playing. But I definitely did that. I don't know that I faked sick. I might have actually been sick, but for Yakuza 0, I remember not going to work. And I remember staying home and just playing the cabaret minigame for like 12 hours.
Yes.
Awesome. Okay, next question. Related to that, what is your earliest gaming memory?
I remember when my parents brought my brother an NES. This would be the first time I was ever really exposed to video games, but they brought him an NES. And the first two games they bought were Ultra / Konami's Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, which is, the Japanese word for it is kusoge, which is a shit game, is the literal. It is an awful, awful game. I am shocked that I played video games after that I like made a career / life after video games after that. And the other game was Metal Gear, which Metal Gear NES, perfectly serviceable, not actually that good. But those are the two games I played. It was a while before I ever played like a Mario or anything like that. But my earliest gaming memory is my parents bringing that home, my dad putting it on top of the TV, and then going into the back and bringing out his toolbox, which was, in my family, the universal signal for something's about to break.
Yes.
And I don't know, because back in the day you had those like RF adapters that you had to plug the side things in, and you get everything plugged in. Like you had to be on channel 3, but not channel 4, and some other TVs were channel 4, not channel 3. But I remember maybe after like an hour, which felt like an eternity of that thing just sitting on that TV, like that actually getting done, and then turning it on to turn on Ninja Turtles, and then immediately go, because in that game, when you press start, Splinter or April will say something on the like little menu screen where you choose the turtles. And I remember like turning it on, my brother and I, who did not know how to read, being like, Mom, help, like coming over here, like, can you please read that for us? My mom, who was like knew English but did not like, was not necessarily conversational in it at that point, would like read it, be like, says go to the dam. We're like, oh, what does that mean? We don't know what that means. So yeah, that was my earliest memory, is like that game, playing that game, not realizing how bad it was, but also like having to call in my mom every time like I pressed pause, because I don't know whether something being said was very important. Thank God I didn't get like Dragon Quest or whatever until after I could learn how to read.
That's so funny, because playing video games was maybe my biggest motivation to learn how to read as a kid. So I could learn how to navigate menus and understand where I needed to go and all of that. Obviously good teachers and parents and stuff, but like that was my primary motivation.
That same year, my dad, who is a communications professor, gave me a copy. Come on, I was 3 years old. Gave me a copy of All the President's Men by Woodward and Bernstein. It was like, learn how to read this. So that took me about like 3-4 years, but that's why I'm a journalist now, because I was like, oh, journalists are cool. Journalists took down the president. That's amazing. That basically set me on my life path.
Right. Wow. Okay. Next question. What is your most controversial gaming opinion?
I got a Game of the Year list coming out in the next couple of days that has God of War at 9, which in recent days I might actually like push that up a little bit. I'm not really a fan of honestly most of Sony's first party portfolio. Like I don't think Uncharted's really that good. I'm not a huge fan of The Last of Us. I think those games are fine. I don't begrudge them. I think they're well made, but like a lot of what they do is not for me. I think in terms of like raw numbers, in terms of popularity, I really like Pokemon. I have not liked the last couple of games. So like the last game sold 10 million. I was telling you all before that, I think it's kind of sloppily, garbagely made. Yeah. Let's see. I'm sure I know I have a lot of hot takes because
just so you know, we don't need all of them. We don't need a comprehensive list. We just need your most controversial opinion. Most controversial is, I think MGS 5 is the second best of that series. Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah. I think 3 is the best, but 5 is like the best actual stealth game I think that's ever been put out.
I you know what? I respect the take. Absolutely. It's just, you can do so many things. Like it's just
yeah.
The world is your oyster and you can play it how you want to. And yes, I respect it. Absolutely.
I'm a bit disappointed Death Stranding 2 is coming next because I'd love to see him just iterate on that stealth stuff again.
I don't know. I think they're going to combine. I think we're going to have like a Metal Gear Death Stranding thing happening.
Like a singularity in that universe.
There was essentially a Metal Gear in that trailer, so who knows?
Right? So no, that's my great hope that we're just going to have combine the two together and something crazy is going to happen.
Awesome. Well, last question from me before I kick it back over to Flora. Yeah. Who is the superior Mario brother?
Luigi.
Of course. Thank you.
He jumps high. Like, sliding is not that big a deal as long as you kind of know where you're going. Jumping higher is... Sliding you can compensate for. Jumping higher is something that is, like, good. Innately good. Cannot be compensated for. You can't have Mario just jump a little bit higher when you want him to. Sliding is whatever. You're a good enough player to deal with that.
Yep, I'm with you. All right, Flora, back over to you.
I'll just end with one more. Imran, one of my favorite articles of yours from last year was about how Super Mario Sunshine was the first Yakuza game. I'm curious, do you think there are any other contenders for like predecessor Yakuza games that you could spin a full-length article about?
That's a question that might take a little bit of thought. I might like think about that in the back of my head and try and like give you an answer later in the show.
Yeah, that's totally fine.
But I think there are definitely probably examples of games that fit that Yakuza mold of going to jail for no reason and having to clean up a town that you've already like pledged your loyalty to.
Yeah, awesome. So yeah, let's go ahead and talk about Yakuza 0. The reason we are all here, Yakuza 0 was developed by Ryuga Gotoku Studio, published by Sega. It was published on PlayStation 3, 4, Windows, Xbox One, and Amazon Luna. Looking at the release date of this is kind of awkward because you have the Japan release, which is 2015, March 12th of that year, and then later coming to the US and Europe, which is January 24th, 2017. And before we really dive in here, we're going to do what is known as the fast pitch on this show, where we try to describe the game that we're going to talk about in one sentence. Would anyone like to go first?
I'm happy to go first.
Go for it.
Yakuza 0 is a paper tissue collecting simulator.
Good. Another one, please. Another one. Thank you, sir. I can go next. It's Streets of Rage meets like The Days of Our Lives meets The Godfather.
Whoa.
On my initial take, my early take. That's what I get.
I kind of see where you're going with that.
I'll try.
Yeah.
Yakuza 0 is River City Ransom with pathos.
Okay.
Okay. You are beating up a lot of people along the way.
Yeah.
And I guess I'll say that Yakuza 0 is like the best Christmas game in the way that people say Die Hard is the best Christmas game or movie.
That's a good one. You guys are good at this.
Sometimes. Usually not, but sometimes.
Cool. So just taking us back to the 2017 release of Yakuza 0, some games that came out on the same day, same week. You have Resident Evil 7 Biohazard, you have Tales of Berseria, you have, in the same week, Dragon Quest 8 and Gravity Rush 2. Before really going into the specifics of this game, I just kind of want to get a sense of your background with this game is commonly described as an action-adventure game. That feels super open, but like, what other games, Imran, have you played sort of in this genre that are not necessarily just Yakuza experiences?
I mean, that same, like you were mentioning the release timing, it came out 2 months before Breath of the Wild, 3 months before Nier Automata, which are games I would say are actually very similar in their, like, what they're set out to do, not necessarily, like, the kind of game they are.
Yeah.
But those are all action-adventure games. And I think, like, those 3 games together, I started creating a, what's the word I want to look for? Reputation or a wave of Japan is back.
Yeah.
Japanese games now make sense again. So, like, I think it's really honestly kind of weird. Like, Horizon, I guess, is also part of that. That's part of the Japan wave, but that's part of, like, that also came out around that same time, where I think all 4 of those games kind of put that, like, action-adventure genre into the forefront of the gaming industry for at least the last 5 years.
Yeah, definitely. And I think around that same time period, I think of like Persona 5 as well. Just that those sort of like that whole wave, I feel like that year was just astounding for games. Katie, have you played any games like this before?
Action adventure games? Yes.
Just
games like this game?
Yeah, sure.
That's a very good distinction, Katie.
Okay.
Absolutely not. The closest thing, and it's not at all similar, you just mentioned Persona. I've played Persona 5. Mm-hmm. Other than that, I've come to realize in the last few years that like Japanese games are not something that I'm as well versed in as I kind of thought I was, even though I hadn't been playing them for the past so many years. Like when I was a kid, there was early Final Fantasies, things like that. But no, the last so many years, not as much. But I've liked to get back into them a bit more. So yeah, Persona 5 was one, and I adored that game. So you brought up Yakuza, and I know how much you adore Yakuza, Flora. So I was like, yes, I want to try Yakuza. It's like, the hot stuff right now. It just comes out, gets more and more popular with each release. So I'm like, yes, I want to play Yakuza. So no, I have not played a game like this. Not quite.
Yeah. Like, to echo that, I don't think I've played a game like Yakuza, although I've played games in the genre. Yakuza 0 feels very odd, very unique. In my only experience with Yakuza, the genre the game up until now, has been listening to Alex Navarro talk about Yakuza on successive episodes of whatever podcast he's on at the time. So I feel like I've been exposed to the fever dream of the Yakuza universe via descriptions of the things that happen, and also our insane community led by Flora in the Discord every Friday posting a GIF of the main characters dancing, saying it's Friday. So there is just so much weirdness in this game that I had never been exposed to before, except through like the peripheral of the culture.
Yeah, I imagine that if your first impression is just the memes of Yakuza, you're going to have a very wild experience getting like oriented in your first few hours. Because
let me tell you,
like Yakuza 0 in particular starts off like so seriously and like very slow paced, and you're wondering like, when is all the silliness going to come out? But I'm sure we'll get there.
Oh, I have not have that opinion, but we
will
get there.
Really? Okay.
Yes.
Imran, I wanted to ask you, like, what's your history with the rest of the Yakuza series? I assume you've played many, many more. I've seen you like talk about them somewhat online. But which ones have you played? Which ones stand out to you in the series, etc.?
So I've played, I think, up to Yakuza 0, I had at least touched every game in the series that had come out in America. Like, part of them, some of them were reviews, some of them were just like, I want to try this. I played the first game, and I was like, this is really... The first game was dubbed in English, and it had like...
with like the Mark Hamill performance and everything?
Mark Hamill's the only notable one. I'm trying to remember the name of the guy who played Shimano, and he's in this. Oh. He just got announced for this other game like 2 weeks ago, like Crime City or something. Matt? No, I never mind. Well, anyway, there was people. They had like a big list of. Right, like Richard Lee Cook was in that game. There were a big list of actors, yet somehow it all sounded just terrible. Like it was that era where big actors would do in a game and be like, So it's just a video game, right? I don't need to try. And it didn't work out. I tried Yakuza 2 and I was like, I'm not feeling this either. I played a little bit of the story. 3 had maybe the slowest start of any game in the series. 4 I enjoyed, but by 4 I started to feel like the wheels are coming off. And like you mentioned earlier that the games are getting hotter and hotter and bigger. Sega was kind of done by 5 releasing these in America. They were just like, Sony had to release 5 because it was part of a fan request campaign. So by the time 5 did come out, it was a PS3 game long after the PS4 had come out. And when 0 came out, I was like, okay, I will give this one last shot. I'm going to try 0 and I'm going to like see if this series is actually for me. And it just blew me away. So like by the time I played 0, I was also similarly like, maybe I'm just not into this series, but now I'm like, oh yeah, I'm a full-on fan.
That kind of answers a question that I wanted to pose to the two of you, our Yakuza experts, was basically where this came in the series, where it had been before. Was it good before? Was this similar to what had come before? Was it similar to what comes after? Is it different in any way? Like, I don't know as far as the context within the series, how it relates to everything else.
In my opinion, it's where the series finally picks up. It's where like the writing starts matching the quality of the game, where they start it's hard to elaborate on, it's hard to or exaggerate how important the different fighting styles actually were to the repetitiveness of that game, or like the lack of repetitiveness. Because in 1, 2, 3, they all had just Kiryu, and it was Kiryu in the dragon style, which is a slow, somewhat plodding style that wasn't really that fun to do. 4 and 5 introduced multiple characters, but if you didn't really like their fighting styles, you were stuck as them for chapters. Like Haruka, for example, is in 5, and her whole thing is she gets challenged by people doing dance battles, which is like neat and has variety, but by the end of the chapter, you're like, I am so done with this. I want to move on to just hitting people again. And like what 0 did is it introduced like, what if we just had a bunch of fighting styles that changed whenever you want them to change? And that is what actually made the game much more interesting. It lets you actually like really, when someone is coming up to you every 5 seconds looking for a battle, it can get very boring if you're doing the exact same things over and over. And just going like, oh, I want to do this in beast style or the boxing style or whatever, that makes a much bigger difference. And I think like that combined with the I think stellar story is probably like what actually elevated 0 above the rest of the series for me.
Okay. Yeah. So the ability to add your own variety when you feel that you need variety.
Yeah.
When you're starting to feel some boredom.
If Devil May Cry were Dante's original style of the entire series, that game would not have gotten past 3, probably.
That's a good point.
So anything before Yakuza 0, you're saying, not critical to play. Is that the read I'm getting?
I think if you're a huge Yakuza fan and you like that story and cutscenes, I would go back to them and maybe test them out, especially with the HD remasters that I think are still on Game Pass. But if you're looking for, I want this gameplay in another game, your choice is pretty much Yakuza Kiwami, and that's it. Okay, so we're at a good entry point into the series. Yes, I think 0 is such a good entry point that they've actually gone back with the remakes and remasters, or with the remakes mostly and the new games, and have assumed you have played 0. Like, there's a side quest in Yakuza 6, which was developed and released after 0, that does not make any sense if you've not played Yakuza 0.
Interesting. Yeah, definitely. I totally agree with what you're saying about the combat stuff, like specifically being locked in for chapters at a time. Like it does try to iterate on itself as the series goes on, but 0 is what really feels like the most dynamic of the brawler combat. And it has my 2 favorite fighting styles, like out of any of the games by far. Absenting maybe some Yakuza Like a Dragon stuff, but that's probably its own conversation. All the turn-based. Yeah, like finding a boss that has a specific fighting style and matching their fighting style because it's just cool to do. Like, as many times as you fight Kuze in that game, fighting him with the boxing, the fisting style is like amazing. It is like, it makes for actual, like, I want to say cinematic fights.
Wait, so why is it special to like match their style?
Because like it's just a cool thing of, as good as you think you are as a boxer, I am better than you.
Okay. Understood.
Also, he hits you with a motorcycle at some point. So it's just revenge.
See, this is the context that I kind of had going in. It's like, oh yeah, by the way, you just get hit by a motorcycle, or you're gonna fall 13 floors out of this building and land and survive.
Which
like,
is
maybe not literally, but those are the types of things that Yakuza was always described to me as.
Yeah.
So in the run-up to Yakuza 0, one of the things they're like, we're going to explain how Kiryu is so strong. They do not in any way explain it. And I don't know what they were thinking when they said that, or if there was a scene that got cut or something, but Kiryu is just a dude who's very strong.
I like it with no explanation. I want no explanation. I just want wackiness with no reason, and just like, no, you're accepting it. That was kind of my thing coming into this game as I'm starting to play it, and I'm just like, oh, you just go along with this. Wacky stuff is going to happen. You are going to meet wacky people. The storylines are going to be some of the most off the wall things that you will just like come into contact with no setup. And I'm just like, anyone could say anything. Like I could meet someone on the street and they could literally say anything, and I don't know what it's going to be. And that's part of my excitement of playing this game is I'm just like, I don't know what's going to happen, and it's thrilling all the time. It could be the most mundane thing, or it could be there's a cult leader taking all these people and they're wiping their memories, or it could be some guy who's like, I'm running to get lip gloss or lip balm. Like, I don't know. Anything can happen. And that's part of what I like about it so far is it just feels so wacky constantly.
So I am only 2 chapters into this game because of that. Because of the absolute craziness. Yeah. Like I initially bounced off a little bit at the beginning because I was like, oh, serious main story. Yeah. And then crazy stuff happens that like broke believability. And then you're like, no, trust me. Like this is the weird jank that you're in it for. Mm-hmm. And then I just got swept up in all these side quests. I'm like, I'd much rather beat up some people to play some RC car racing or pretend I'm a producer on this TV show for a day. Or, like all of these random things. That's the stuff that I've started to love more about this than anything. Because it is just so varied and weird, and almost anything could happen in this little neighborhood in Tokyo.
Yeah. I will say like weird and wacky are like good hooks for this game. And by the end of the actual main story, I was bawling. Yeah. Like I was like actually crying because like I got so attached to these characters and what they did with them and like the admittedly kind of tragic ways that the story kind of ends. Yeah. Like in my adult life, I've cried at 2 pieces of media. Whoa. One was Everything Everywhere All at Once. The other was this.
Wow. Okay.
There's a lot of crying lately for you.
Yes. Yeah. Within the last couple of years, there's been a lot of it.
Should we talk about the setup? Should we get into that?
Yeah. What is it?
Yeah.
What's Yakuza?
I'm going to lean on the experts here.
Yes.
Because for me, it's a paper tissue collecting simulator.
I guess like Yakuza is it is in theory a series about people who are or used to be in the Yakuza. I believe that there's like some sort of social like taboo about like playing as somebody that is actively in the Yakuza, but they've kind of like played around or they've fudged the edges on that quite a bit over the years. Yeah. But like it is about Kazuma Kiryu repeatedly every Christmas getting back involved with the Tojo clan, a clan that used to be his family, and either trying to solve their troubles or making it much worse and then solving it. Yes. And Yakuza 0 is a throwback to the bubble era of late 80s Japan, which is when this is actually kind of crucial to the main story of the game, but that's when realty prices were at their absolute highest in the entire history of the country. So that being the way it is that the Yakuza, the actual like mafia, was basically running things through realty at that part of the country's history, because they were just buying up things and selling it off at like incredible prices. So this entire game is about one small plot of land that is like the size of an alley that could go for like what is I think the equivalent of like $100 million at that time. And because it's set in the 80s and all that, there's like old references to like there's a side quest that's about Dragon Quest 3. There's side quests that are about like the introduction of the sales tax. There's side quests that are about like RC cars, like things that were popular at the time that like don't make a lot of sense to people nowadays, but because they get to set it back in the 80s, they're just gonna like make all these like dumb jokes about you remember how weird it was to wait in line for a video game?
Yeah.
That's how things used to be.
Well, and also to speak to the thing that Mike has brought up a few times now about like the like paper tissue simulator or whatever, like that's also just another fun little quirky historical relic of like, oh, these tissues used to be passed out as like a way of like marketing, like advertisements were printed on these things. And like that's something that culturally, like as an American, I never knew and never encountered, but like makes a ton of sense when you start to like dig into it a little bit.
Well, as an American, they would not give it to you. That's the thing. as you're walking through, say, Shibuya, they'll hand like hand it to one person, hand it to the next person. You walk by, they hold it back. It's like
Really?
Kind of saw that coming.
Interesting. Yeah, I had no context for that until I asked in the Discord because I was just frankly annoyed that I was like collecting all of these paper tissues. And I'm like, what am I ever going to use these for?
Did you think he was going to give you something different the next time that you talk to that man? Where you're like, maybe this time it won't be tissues. And then he gave you tissues again?
The thing was, it wasn't always the same guy, but I was just getting it from random people. So I was like, clearly there has to be some use in it. And
It used to be a lot worse.
Okay.
Like in previous games, they would take up item slots. So you would not be able to pick up things because you had all these tissues that you couldn't just throw away.
That's another thing is that there are so many like Japanese cultural I feel like there are these touchstones that are coming up and I'm like, oh, I feel like I'm not getting this, and that makes it feel more like I'm just in a strange place. Like there was something today, I played it today, and there was something where I was like, this is clearly a thing that happens, that is occurs more in this culture that I have no knowledge of. And that also kind of adds to this like feeling of anything can happen. Anyone can say anything about anything, and I don't know what it's going to be because I don't even know what's super culturally relevant.
Yeah, it's actually very interesting. Like the area this game takes place in, and most of the Yakuza games take place in, Kamurocho, is based on Kabukicho in Tokyo. And there's a few things where they fudge the map to not make it exactly the same. But if you've played enough Yakuza, you can navigate around there without a map, and it's surprisingly easy.
I have heard that before. Is this small little district area? Is this the vibe that I got is kind of a like a Bourbon Street kind of New Orleans. I mean, obviously a completely other culture, different, but like. Just the party place, like a place where kind of anything goes more so than other areas?
It's a red light district, essentially.
Yeah. Okay.
So it is like the massages and like sex work and stuff like that is mostly what's there. There's some convenience stores, there's like a couple of family marts, stuff like that. But it is mostly like, this is where you go, where people looking for like sex work go to blow off steam.
Okay.
Which makes it a obvious place to set a mafia game.
Mm-hmm. I noticed a bunch of billboards for those, either idols or basically there was a lot of guys with Final Fantasy hair.
Yes.
Expertly coiffed it.
Hosts, yes. There's a lot of host clubs and hostess clubs there.
What's up with the cards? I'm picking up all these cards, these like women cards, and I'm like, I'm picking them up because I have, this game is really tapping into my like completionist, vibe where I'm like, well, I got to pick up these cards. I don't know what they do. And you can equip a charm. There's equipment. We have to get to that too. There's weapons are crazy. But yeah, you can equip a charm that basically makes a chime whenever you're near a card. And I'm like, well, I have to have that on me. Like screw defense and everything. I have to get these cards. Yeah. So every time I hear this chime, I'm like, where's the card? Where's the card? And I pick it up. I have no idea what it's for, what it does, if it does anything. But I'm like, great, I got another card. And I keep on running on my merry way. And
the series has a fairly inexorable tie now with Japanese pornography.
Yeah.
So the cards you're picking up are Japanese porn stars, essentially. And basically...
Really?
Yes. So, and there's actually quite a few Japanese porn stars just like as characters and NPCs in the game.
Like based on actual people or completely fictional?
based on actual people.
Yeah, like the hostess.
So like most of the cabaret in the cabaret club, like most of the actual named characters are porn stars. The one in the realty game, the woman who works as your secretary is a Japanese porn star.
Oh,
like there's it's been going for a few games, and it's mostly like they take pride in being a very adult game series to the point where it's like, okay, you didn't necessarily need to do this, but okay, whatever if you're going to. And like in Yakuza 6, there's like a Kiryu can very naively log on to a porn star's webcam, and it's just footage of her like talking back to him. That's it. Like that's the entire mini game.
Yeah.
That's so wild. I can't imagine that. I can't imagine just having random porn star cameos in any other game, like any other series.
Yeah, it's like this game's affinity for that sort of like adult theme is persistent in other mini games as well. Like there's a situation where Kiryu like cold calls these women that he doesn't really know, and he has to like pick from a dial of like the best, most seductive options, and then like if it's a success, then you meet up and take them on a date. And like there's like with the cards specifically, I'm actually reminded of when I was living in China. There would be like sex workers who would slip little like calling cards under the door, like to your hotel or your hostel room, and like you would come back and you would just have like a picture of a woman with like a phone number and like some details, and that's kind of like how I initially read these cards. But like later in the game you discover like these video stores and stuff. You can probably just run into it right off the bat, honestly. And
yeah, I couldn't make use of it. I was like, well, I guess I gotta go to the porn video store because it's here. I'm like, I gotta go to every building. I gotta go to each one and see what's up, and like because there's cool stuff in each one. So I'm like, all right, sex video store, let's go. And it's basically like, oh, later on, like I couldn't actually go in. It told me that later on, once you have met certain people, then you can go in and watch their videos. I think it's
Mr. Libido you have to meet, if I'm not mistaken.
Mr. Libido?
Mr. Libido, yeah.
What?
I believe before he tells you his name, his text box just says walking erection.
Yeah.
Oh, come on.
This just gets better. I did not think I would love this game as much as I do. And if you had pitched all this to me, if you had laid this out to me and said, okay, all these things are going to happen, I don't know that in itself would have sold the game to me. Like, I'd be like, oh, okay, sure, that sounds crazy, but I don't know. But there's something about the tone of the game and the range from the serious to the wacky, and your character's reaction, like Kiryu or Majima's reactions
always.
to things. Deadpan, and just like their comments, or sometimes they're like, they'll kind of be like, this guy's nuts, like what is this guy doing, and like kind of like make fun of the person they're talking about a little bit, or they are super empathetic to the person's problems. And there's something about the tone that just like zips back and forth that is just so entertaining. Even the tone of the fights and the way that you could like bash people over the head with a bicycle is just so much fun.
To that point, the reaction to everything is just beating people up. It's like, and we're gonna fight.
It's weird because like when you do these side quests, Kiryu never gets into it thinking like, oh, I'll just beat some people up for you. It always manages like, he's like, okay, I'll put on a nice sweater and pretend to be a director. And then somehow somebody gets attacked, so Kiryu's like, all right, guess I gotta get involved.
Yes, and that kind of endears me to him, that he's like the tough guy, but he's not walking around like, I'm going to beat people up. He's just like, oh, it's happening again. All right, I guess I'll fight you. But he's not looking for a fight. Yeah, trouble finds me again.
There is a part in Yakuza's the PSP game. I don't remember the name of it, but they try to explain that as part of a gang initiation, every like mob or like street gang or street toughs or whoever tell their group there's a guy who comes around every Christmas. He looks real tough. Go pick a fight with him as part of your initiation. If you get beat up, you're in the gang. So like that's why Kiryu keeps getting attacked every Christmas.
What? Because they think that he's the tough guy that's been sent to them.
Yes.
To get in a fight with.
Yes. I don't know how like canon that PSP game is, but that's the explanation of why people keep coming at him every December.
Like, that's the guy. Oh my god, this is fantastic. Yeah, and then there's the weapons, like the combat system. Also, when it starts off, I think like your first big interaction with the combat system is in that like not apartment building, but like a business not skyscraper, but multi-level like business building, and you're going up the steps after you first meet the leaders of the different branches,
the different clans,
of the Yakuza.
different mafia bosses.
Yeah. And you're going around and all these henchmen are coming in and you fight them, and then you go out that door and you go up the stairs and you fight some more people. And at first I was like, I don't get it. It took me a couple minutes to kind of get the hang of it. And then once you get the hang of it, it just becomes fun because you're like, oh, I can grab this guy. And then all of the like finishing moves are a lot of fun. No matter how many times I see him slam somebody into the wall and like punch his skull in, it's still fun. And then just when I'm kind of like, okay, this is starting to lose its freshness, I discovered all of the many, many different weapons.
Oh, yeah.
There's a lightsaber. It's not a lightsaber because God forbid they can't call it a lightsaber, but that's a lightsaber. They're like, oh, it's a photon sword or something. And I'm like, oh my God, I can have a lightsaber.
There's a, what do you call those fish with like big, like what?
Oh, like
guard
swordfish?
fish,
Yeah, the Marlin cannon.
Yeah, a Marlin cannon that you can just shoot people. There's like slime guns, which is a shotgun that just makes people slip.
What?
Yes, I pulled out the Marlin cannon. I was like, wait, I can equip these weapons? Oh my God. And I'm like, wait, how do I pull the weapon out? I was like, I have it equipped. How do I use it? And then I found the button and this Marlin cannon goes and aimed, and I'm like, and then I fired it and it just like basically exploded these guys. Like they just sent them sprawling, and I'm like, this is the best game ever. I love this game.
Do you impale people with marlins?
No. You would think so. Actually, you should be able to impale them with. Can you? I see Imran's face. Can you impale them?
The funniest bit of little narrative dissonance in the Yakuza series is, and this is a big part of Yakuza 0 as well, is that Kiryu never kills anybody.
Canonically.
However, there's a minigame late in the game which is like a Virtua Cop thing where you are Kiryu with a handgun shooting down like bikers and helicopters chasing you, but you're never killing anybody. Narratively, Kiryu has never killed anyone.
God forbid.
He's just pile drive people through 3 stories of a building
and smash their heads into and through walls, and
just life-altering injuries.
He's Batman, basically.
They're sleeping. It's fine.
Yeah.
It's funny you mentioned all the stuff about weapons, because in my first playthrough of Yakuza, I barely touched any of the weapons outside of just the environmental things that you can pick up. Like if you beat somebody up and they drop a bat, then you can pick up their bat, or like picking up a motorcycle or a cone or something off the side of the road and just like, wailing that until it breaks. I think the fact that everything was durable, didn't have durability, was an initial just like, oh, okay, I'm not really going to focus on this as a way to like progress my character. I'm just going to try and avoid damage in combat and like change between the various styles as necessary. But like later in the game, as I approached a sort of like foolish, I'm going to try and 100% this game, like the completion list on this game is just absurd. You have to obtain all of like the weapons and like all of the materials, and like there's like a I think it's called the Dragon and Tiger. There's like a store where you have to like send people out on expeditions to find these things, and there's tiny fractions of percentages of finding this one little weapon that you need, and it's its own task. But like in that process, I actually finally got used to the weapons and started seeking them out, and some of them are actually like required for like these secret bosses if you do all the sub stories and stuff. But obviously I won't go into that right now, but just something to consider.
I wasn't thinking I need to use the weapons. Like I don't mind. I like the fights without the weapons, but when I see something like a Marlin cannon, I'm like, I gotta use that.
Yeah, it's just too absurd.
Of course. It's too absurd. Like a regular like katana, I'm like, I don't really need to use that. Like it's fine. I can stay in my inventory, but I'm like, oh, I gotta see what this thing does. And so I'll equip those ones because it's just fun.
It's not a weapon, but keep an orange with you, because at some point you will have a use for that orange in battle.
Yeah.
This is what I'm here for. I need that stuff. Keep an orange with you at all times.
Yes.
Got it. Noted.
Are there any other like weird inventory things like that? Because I remember the orange happening on my replay, but it was not something that happened in my first playthrough.
I think if you keep a teapot with you, there's one for that. But I think you can also grab teapots off like the side of the street sometimes. So I don't remember any offhand besides the orange and the teapot.
So we've talked a bit about Kiryu. I have not gotten far enough to unlock the other character. Can you guys give me a debrief? What should I expect?
So Majima is or was a side character in the series in one 1, 2, and 3. At about 4, they decided to start giving him more of a story.
Mm-hmm.
And like the story they give him is he was supposed to be part of like a multi-man hit along with his sworn brother.
Mm-hmm.
But his family kept him from like, by family, I mean his Yakuza family, kept him from attending because they wanted to blame the entire hit on his brother, sworn brother. So his sworn brother went to jail for decades thinking that Majima betrayed him. And all that time, when Kiryu destroys a Yakuza group, what happens is all their people are leaderless, so Majima's like, hey, why don't you join my group? So by the time Yakuza 4 rolls around, Majima has the biggest army in the entire city. Mm-hmm. He has literally every like lost son of the Yakuza under him. So that's
kind of him.
It also means that, because like he has a thing where initially in the first few games he is just crazy.
Yeah.
They don't like, he is essentially the Joker, which is why Mark Hamill playing him made sense back in the time. By about Yakuza 4, it started to become like, wait, is he actually crazy or is he just like a genius that's pretending to be crazy?
Yeah.
And then like around that time is when Yakuza 0 gets made, because they're like, okay, it turns out Majima was very popular. Yeah. Let's go back and like make him a playable character and try and explain a little bit why he acts the way it does. So Yakuza 0 is that story of why does Majima in later games act like the Joker, but early, like there are moments of lucidity for him.
Yeah.
So this is like when you start playing as him, you're like, wait, he is a straight man. He seems to have, like, the thing he is most broken up about is the fact that he let his sworn brother go to jail and has never been able to explain that to him yet. So he is looking for a way to stay in the Yakuza, not in trouble, so that his sworn brother can find him and exact his revenge. Mm-hmm. So this game is in more ways than I think, because Kiryu's story feels kind of planted on, but Majima's story is what this game actually feels like it's supposed to be about, is how do we tell the story of how Majima gets from here to where he is in Yakuza 4 and 5, 5 in particular being a very, like, surprising backstory for him, where you find out, like, he had a period of such lucidity that, like, he had a son, or his partner was pregnant, but ultimately she had to have an abortion, and that's part of what, like, drove him into the Yakuza in the first place. And, like, it turns out really good. Like, Majima's story is, I think, the most compelling thing about this game, in a game full of compelling things.
The intro to Majima, like the initial cutscene,
so good.
I was enthralled.
That whole thing is like 40 minutes long, but it's like
so
the best character intro I've ever seen.
Yeah, same.
I've played like 5 to 10 hours of this game. I haven't even met this character that you're saying the game is basically
That's because you're
around.
running around grabbing tissues.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's true. I am.
It is like, you do need the Kiryu setup to get to Majima, and those stories intertwine in a very, like, actually, like, wow, that's really interesting. Like, it's a very good crime drama. Like, Yakuza builds itself around twists maybe a little too often.
Yeah.
I think in Yakuza 0, it works better than most. I'm not going to spoil anything for you guys because you have not gotten there yet. But when the way those two stories intertwine eventually is probably my favorite, like, holy shit moment of that game.
Absolutely. Like, Majima is the centerpiece of this game in my experience, or at least on the replay. That's really the value that I got out of it. And then I think it was such a successful, like, storytelling experiment that in Kiwami, you have, like, these, like, extra chapters from, like, Majima's... Or 2, yeah, sorry. Kiwami 2, you have these, like, extra chapters from Majima's perspective, and you finally get a little bit of closure on some of the stuff that Yakuza 0, like, establishes. So,
which I haven't played yet. I should do that at some point.
Yeah, it's definitely worth it, especially considering you cried at the end, and for probably reasons similar to what made me cry. It's absolutely fulfilling, I would say.
Yeah, the time spent with Kiryu, and I don't know, it was like a perfect little intro into Majima, just like just spacing wise and like plotline wise, and just when they unveiled him, I was like, oh, I'm ready for somebody new. And he has kind of a similar vibe to Kiryu in that he's like, you know, tough guy who doesn't need to always be the tough guy and doesn't always need to beat up on people. But then you quickly find out that he's got more stuff going on. And as soon as he's in his apartment and he's looking out his window and that whole setup, I was like, oh, okay, we're going places. We have like a bit of depth to dive into, and we've got a ways to go. So I'm very interested to see how it's going to develop.
Yeah, absolutely. Like Majima's intro scene, like there's so much charisma, which is this immediate contrast and like the showboat sort of nature of the cabaret that he's working at, and just like everything that happens in that little like scenario. It seems like, okay, we're getting a wildly different character, but in the moment to moment of actually playing Majima, I find that they actually are very similar in the sense of like not really emoting too much, kind of like having wacky commentary on all of the serious and absurd things happening to them. And of course the game is intentionally trying to draw this parallel, but like down to the fighting styles, like they do feel radically different on a moment to moment basis, which I really, really enjoyed. Like it did feel like there was always something new just around the corner. Like as soon as something got stale in this game, like another chapter or a character change happened. And that's what kept me going. Cause like right off the bat, there was so much Kiryu that I was kind of like turned off a little bit. Not that I disliked Kiryu's character, but like I didn't immediately click with it because the storytelling, like the introduction, I want to say the first 5 hours, it changes how it wants to tell its story like 6 or 7 different times. There's like high production cutscene and then just like visual novel.
Yes.
And then like you run around like for 2 seconds and then you get stopped and then cutscene happens and like, oh, I'm on a sub story now. It's incredibly disorienting. But by the time Majima picks up, I feel like the game really does take its stride.
Well, Majima actually like differs from Kiryu in that he does have fun fighting.
Yeah.
He like really enjoys it.
Actually,
So-
yes, you're right. He talks about it a lot. He's like, I need to bash people's heads in. He's like, oh, why would I want to do anything different than that? Yeah, you're right.
Yeah, which is like why his difference with Kiryu is Kiryu looks at like a new fighting style is like, I can get stronger if I do this. Majima looks at like, that looks fun.
Yeah.
It would be fun if I learned how to breakdance and hit people with it.
Yeah. So yeah, let's talk a little bit about the minigames in Yakuza 0. There is a ton of content that is just devoid of any story purpose, although some of it does intersect. I want to get a sense of Katie and then Mike, if you have really dabbled in any of these things, like bowling or like even like mahjong or pool or darts or like just all of the actual minigame sort of stuff.
I've tried to dive into all of it. I do not understand Shogi to save my life.
No, you never do.
Yeah.
Like that and mahjong will just like
Mahjong. I don't
call
understand
guys.
mahjong. I thought I understood mahjong,
I don't either.
and now I know that I don't. I do not at all. In Shogi, I pick random pieces and I go, oh, I can move here with that one, and then I pick another one. I go, oh, I can move here with that one because I don't remember because they're so. I feel like there's a lot of options. Mm-hmm. And there's like your pawns, and then everything else. I don't know how these move. And
Is Shogi not chess?
Well, sorry, it's chess.
Shogi
It's chess.
Yeah,
basically, but with different move sets.
Oh, okay.
And I played the man in the street, and he's like, "Oh, how much shogi do you know?" I said, "Or how confident in your shogi abilities?" And I put 0. And he said, "Great, I'm going to play you like a beginner," and I got slaughtered. And then I thought, maybe later, maybe I'll come back to this. But yeah, I've done a bit of everything, I think. As for everything that I've encountered, I've tried to like interact with. Batting, very difficult. The batting cage, can't accomplish much there. Bowling, you can become friends with people. Yeah. Which I first discovered with the bowling alley woman who's like, hey, and a
Also
little
a porn
friendship
star.
meter started. I was,
Wait, really?
I can,
Yes.
I can become friends with the porn star who runs the bowling alley. Amazing.
And she gives you a
like-
chicken eventually.
Yes.
Or turkey eventually.
I like
Which
that
is, I
we're
think, like,
just
the first
talking
piece of
about
marketing.
random side characters that Imran's like, and she's also a porn star. Noted
any,
porn
any
star.
female NPC probably going to be a porn star.
Yeah.
Unreal. Yeah, so I played around with some of the mini games because I've mostly just been doing side stories and anything but the main quest. But Katie, I think you bring up like an interesting part in the shogi in that like the level of localization for this game seems to largely be around like, localizing text with some context, but there's just a level of localizing Japanese culture that they just can't do or do not do that makes it, I don't want to say impenetrable, but definitely makes you feel like not only is this game weird, but it is from a very foreign culture, right? It's not one-to-one at all. Which I like, to me, maybe because I feel like it's a paper tissue simulator, but that was just one of them, you know? It was just one of those things of like, this is like a cultural element or artifact that you can't, there's no like localizing that, right? There's no like context cue you can give people like, by the way, this was a thing that happened on the regular without it pulling you out of the game.
I enjoyed that with like Mahjong and Shogi of feeling like a visitor and saying, I have no knowledge base of this and trying to piece it together. Whereas I assume that if you are from Japan or have lived in Japan for a length of time, that you just build up a knowledge of it and it would be easier to grasp. So trying to come in at the age that I'm in with no knowledge is very difficult, and I'm enjoying the challenge, really.
I actually feel like the impenetrability that you mentioned, Mike, wasn't present for me, like as far as like adapting to like the culture and sort of like the things that localization has to do to make it understandable to like a Western audience. Like perhaps it's the fact that I grew up on anime and I just feel like I've been sort of like exposed by proxy to a lot of these things. But like one of my favorite anime growing up was Hikaru no Go, which was like a story about this little kid who like became friends with an enchanted board game spirit for the game Go, which like okay, that's like the worst sales pitch for the anime I could have given you. But like when it was ensconced in that narrative, I picked up the rules quite quickly and I actually started like, I bought a board and I like tried to teach my friends how to play it and I like competed with people online.
Of course you did.
Yeah, no, of course. I can't help myself. But with like Shogi or something like that, like I do think the rules are really well explained. It's just I am not motivated to like learn the rules other than like you get a couple huge walls of text and then you're in the game. Like I don't have like a narrative reason to really care too much other than the completion points list. And so I still like having done the tasks and earned those points, still don't really feel like I have a sense of it. Like if you put the board game in front of me right now, I wouldn't know what to do.
I gotta tell you, it doesn't matter how many times I've seen Shikamaru play Shogi, I still don't know how to play. You know, like the anime is not going to save me there, right?
Yeah. I can't help but notice none of you mentioned karaoke.
I was waiting. That was my next thing. Actually, I was waiting for this to die down. That's going
like
to
the best part.
Karaoke.
That's the part of the intro that will forever live in my memory, is when you and Nishikiyama go out and do Judgment.
Yeah.
And like it turns into that rock scene. And they're all that good. They're all like, every single song is like, okay, yeah, you guys kind of nailed this one.
Yeah. Yeah, you go to a bar with your friend and then he's like, oh, and let's do some karaoke. And then the music kicks in and the camera is swinging around and like the cinematography of this karaoke session is fantastic. And that's one of the first moments where I was like, oh, this is just going to be just weird fun. Just like they're just going to throw in some weird fun and I'm here for it. Yeah, karaoke and then obviously the disco dancing. When I did my first disco dance and Kiryu, who is very serious, very straight-faced, starts doing his initial disco moves across before the what is basically like a like Dance Dance Revolution style. Actually, no, sorry. The karaoke is more like that, whereas this is you have to move
the
box around a grid to the spot and then hit the right button at the moment where the overlay box kind of shrinks down to the right size. Well, I got distracted by explaining the grid. I'm like, the grid, I can see it in my head. But yeah, he starts doing his initial moves and I was like, oh, this is so weird. Let's do some disco. And it's just a lot of fun. That and karaoke are probably my two, just because they're like so cinematic, right? They don't hold back with it.
Yeah.
A couple of times when I was in Japan a couple of months ago, the voice actor for Kiryu has his own band. So I got invited to see it in concert.
Oh my gosh.
And he does do music like from the karaoke songs in Yakuza. So I got to see him perform Judgment live.
Awesome.
Which is one of the coolest things I've ever seen.
That's so cool.
Amazing.
And then, of course, the legendary Friday Night song comes from the disco dancing as well.
The fake Michael Jackson.
Yes.
Who is involved in a side quest later in the game.
No way.
Yeah. There's actually quite a lot going on with like the Michael Jackson character and the dancing, like sort of like competition elements and all of that. It's really involved, especially because like both characters have to do stuff for it.
Mm-hmm.
I like the continuity that's like pulled through the entire game. Like the thread that links like, oh, within the minigame, you will hear the song by that character, and then later on you'll meet that character. Like it's its own world. It is all very like contained within this world, and everything connects to each other. Random thing. The what is his name? The big money guy who
Mr.
comes
Shakedown?
around and
Mr.
just
Shakedown?
beats you. Mr. Shakedown, who just appears. And then the very first time I was like, they've clearly set this up to tell you that you're not going to beat him. Like, at least early in the game, maybe later, I'm not sure. But in my own hubris, I was like, well, let's give it a shot. And then immediately just got obliterated within, I don't know, like 6 blows and lost my, like, 19 million yen. Is it yen?
Yeah.
It's yen.
Mm-hmm.
19 million yen. And I was like, oh, got it. Noted. I will run the other way. And just the way that characters are named, like, no, he's named Mr. Shakedown. Like, we're not gonna, fancy it up and give him some fancy name. No, he is what he is. We're gonna call a spade a spade. I appreciate it.
Yeah, I think there's a gem you get, or not gem, like an accessory you get later in the game. It allows you to cancel any moves by switching to a different form, which is the only way I actually beat him.
Whoa, okay.
By staying in beast form and then going into the quick step form whenever I saw him start to move to dash away.
That's interesting. When I went through for like an 100% run, I had to take him down I forget how many times. And I just started using zap cannons. Like, you can buy a gun that'll just like electrocute and stun him, and you just do that a bunch until he runs and swings at you, and then you dodge a few times. And so I never thought to try the accessory. That's a great little strat. But yeah, the names on these characters, like we mentioned Mr. Libido and like Mr. Shakedown and stuff, like even just like your normal everyday encounters in the alleyway is just like mysterious man and like,
yes,
like I don't know,
the
disgruntled youth.
Yes, disgruntled youth, yes.
That sort of stuff always cracks me up.
So if anyone up till now is thinking, I'm still not sold on this Yakuza, what other pitch do you have for them? Is there anything else that you would say of like, maybe give it a try that we haven't mentioned so far?
I think we covered the story, which is I think the biggest selling point in that game. Yeah. But I would say like when Sega was first marketing it, what they would do is they would show like the funny parts first. Mm-hmm. Like they would show the getting the turkey from the bowling alley thing. They would show like the end of subquest. I think like the selling point I would make is those two things are two halves of the same coin, the wackiness and the serious story, because Yakuza 0 is, I think, the first game I've ever played that really makes them work together. Yeah. They, like, don't necessarily connect. Like, they might as well be two separate sides of someone's life or, like, two alternate dimensions. But, like, what makes them work together is you can just go, like, I've had enough of this main story right this second. I'm going to go do some weird things for a while. Mm-hmm. Or, that was strange. It's funny that quest ended that way. I want something with a bit more, like, seriousness and drama. And you can't just switch between those. Yeah. And it's very hard to make that balance. But it's a thing they actively think about. It's not just a thing they kind of, like, stumbled upon. Like, I was talking to Yokoyama, the RGG studio head, and is like, that's where a lot of our game design time comes from, is trying to pace these things out in a way that makes the player feel like they can or ping pong between them as they need. Yeah. So, like, that is how I'd say try Yakuza 0, is that if you don't think the pacing works for you, you can just adjust it on the fly however you want.
Yeah, and maybe to build on that a little bit, like, I feel like when you pick up a game like Yakuza 0, you're picking up like 100 different games, not just this main brawler story that you're getting, all of these mini games and the sub stories as well. But like inside of the game, there's like a whole real estate mini game that could take hours and hours of time. There is a cabaret club mini game that takes hours and hours of time, and like, no matter what you're in for, maybe you just want to run to like Sega to do some like arcade games, or maybe you want to actually simulate some real life mini games or whatever it is. Like there are so many different kinds of things to do that I feel like no matter what kind of like video game player you happen to be, you can sort of pick your poison and figure out like what's going to be best, or the best way to spend your time. Okay,
very good. And I have one more question for the two of you, since you're both here.
Okay.
What are, let's say top 3 Yakuza games.
Zero's my top.
Or your tops. Your just generally speaking, your favorite Yakuza games. You don't have to specifically say 3.
Is it all downhill here for me?
Yeah,
It's a gentle
Zero's the
slope.
top. It's a gentle slope.
Like I
It's a
really
gradual
like
slide.
7, but I didn't like 7 as much as 0.
Yeah.
I really like 6, but I didn't like 6 so much. I would say 0, 7, 2. When we'll see how Like a Dragon Ishin is. I've heard Ishin is in that same mold of Yakuza 0 because both the main games were made concurrently.
Oh,
Of like it's that same like systems, different like battle stances. Supposedly, like the side quests and the main story are the best, some of the best in the series. I've not played it because it's the first time coming out in English, but I've heard very good things about it. And the little bit I have played in English has been very good.
Yeah, I've actually I imported that game trying to like work my way through it because there's like a translation of like all the menus and stuff that you could like you can kind of fight your way through the game even if you can't actually read what to do. And it holds up really, really well, at least the PS3 version. I'm really excited for that like remake, remaster, whatever it is. I think Imran and I end up in pretty similar places. 0 is my favorite. I think 7 is my second favorite. And then it's hard to say. I'll throw a curveball and say Lost Judgment, even though it's not officially a Yakuza game. I really clicked with that. So like there's Judgment and Lost Judgment, which are like spin-offs in the same place. It looks and plays very much just like the Yakuza games. But like that one I feel like resonated with me in an unexpected way because the first Judgment game didn't really work for me that well. Within the Yakuza games, like I feel like each game changes so significantly that if you're in, you're probably going to be in for no matter like which way the game goes. Imran mentioned earlier, like Yakuza 3 having a really slow start. It does. And it was like painfully slow for me when I first played it. But then like as you get in or like out of the slow part, I feel like it becomes really rewarding really quickly. And just from like a technical polish standpoint, Yakuza Kiwami and Kiwami 2 are really strong entries. So like if you have momentum after playing Yakuza 0, I would say keep going. Like just like pick it up linearly. And if not, if that doesn't work for you, then jump all the way to probably Yakuza 7. It's a very different feeling game. But Like a Dragon's like turn-based stuff. Like the cutscenes and the characters feel the same. The city feels the same. But a lot of it has really matured, I would say, over the years.
Excellent.
Okay. Once again, I wanted to say thank you, Imran, for joining us. I really appreciate you taking the time tonight to talk Yakuza 0. I just want to give you a chance to like plug any work that you have coming up, anything soon. You mentioned like your Game of the Year review, your Patreon. What else do you have going on in the near future?
It's like the Patreon is the main thing at proscons.com.
How's that spelled again?
PROSEKHANS.com. Thank you for reminding me that, again, it's not a thing I can just say out loud. Beyond that, that's mostly what I've been spending my time on. I do work PR, but I don't advertise that when I'm doing this game journalism stuff. So it's you can also find my Twitter at ImranZUMG. Who knows how much Twitter is going to last, but I assume wherever I'm going to go after that is going to be somewhat advertised, unless advertising it gets a banned. Who knows at this point? It's the Wild West there.
Awesome. And Katie, where can people find you on the internet?
I am on Twitter. I am Lesperak, Lesperak. Same thing. I'm gonna go down with the ship. We're gonna see where we land. I don't know, but that's my place. Yeah. So that's pretty much it. That's where I do my talking. I might start posting up some crazy Yakuza 0 screenshots and clips because
yes, please
there are an abundance.
Mike, how about you?
The fine folks can find me at all places online at RuffaloM or michaelruffalo.ca and .com because of that branding. And yeah, you can also find me in the Discord every Friday watching Flora drop a meme of the Yakuza guys dancing in a disco.
There's a surprising abundance of those GIFs out there, like different angles, different characters, different
I see a new one every Friday.
Yeah.
I do feel like I'm in the club now.
Good.
Discord. Like, oh, I get it now.
The Friday night memes will continue until morale improves. You can find us on Twitter at Left Behind Game Club, Instagram at Left Behind Game Club, Discord is leftbehindgame.club/Discord, and if you enjoyed the show, do us two favors, send it to a friend and give us a 5-star review on your podcast platform of choice. You can find me on Twitter, yes, once again, as long as it lasts, I will be going down with the ship, at Ludo Narrative FM. You can check out my written work at epiloguegaming.com. And yeah, check out, join in on the Friday night GIFs. We could use more support in the Yakuza channel. We're going to be picking up this conversation around Yakuza 0 in a few weeks' time, so if our conversation here has sparked your curiosity or interest and you want to give Yakuza 0 a shot, you have a few weeks to do so, and our episode part 2 will be coming out in January 2023.
And that, my friends, is one less game left behind. I hate that you're a GIF person.
Oh, well, now is not the time to litigate that matter, but GIF, jife, GIF, however you want to go.